Proud but grieving daughter of Dr. Asha Goel. She was brutally murdered here more than 21 years ago, right here in this city, in Malabar Hill. But I first want to begin by thanking all of you. You've told our story to the world, and through you, we found solace when the days have been darkest. We knew that someone cared enough to listen to our story, and we hoped that those reports would bring about some positive action. It's now been 21 long years since my mother's murder, and the trial is finally begun. We're very hopeful that with your continued support, my mother's soul will find some peace, and my family will finally obtain justice. Many of you have written stories on my mother's murder before, and there have even been features on television. So you might be familiar with the details, but if you'll indulge me, I'll tell you once again. Dr. Asha Goel was more than a victim. She was a healer, she was a mother, she was a woman who dedicated her life to serving others. My mother was a prominent NRI obstetrician gynecologist living and practicing in Canada. She was born in Mathura, but her family moved to Mumbai when she was 12 years old. She completed her medical studies at Chokiwala Medical College here, and she married my father, who's also a medical graduate, in Mumbai in 1963. And she went to Canada when she was only 22 years old. They were two young medical graduates who went abroad to start a new life and build something for their future family. My father had already completed his specialization in pediatrics, and he wanted to go on to specialize in pediatric surgery. But my mom had always been committed to women's health, and she would not waver from wanting to do anything other than obstetrics and gynecology. When the only place in Canada with a fellowship in pediatric surgery was all the way across the country from the fellowship that my mom received in obstetrics and gynecology, my father compromised, and he gave up his desire to do pediatric surgery, and he settled for general surgery so that my mom could pursue her dream. She completed her fellowship, and she was admitted to the Society of Obstetricians and Gynecologists of Canada as one of the youngest admittees ever, and that's still true today. Although my parents worked very hard and they built a life in Canada, and they had to have 3 children and build a busy practice, they never let go of their roots. And those 3 children are my older brother Sanjay, myself, and my mother. She raised the 3 of us to be proud children of India too. And if there's one word I could use to describe my mother, it would be devoted. She was devoted to her family. She was devoted to her children. She was devoted to her patients and her practice at the hospital. She worked incredibly hard, many times 7 days a week, 14 hours, 16-hour days. She delivered over 10,000 babies in her career, and she said a blessing over every life that she welcomed into the world. And patients will tell you this. They remember that when their baby was born, my mother softly stopped and whispered a blessing to that child's ear to welcome them into the world. She was the one who handled all the high-risk pregnancies and all the most difficult cases. She saved countless babies and mothers. There are children who were named after my mother, even from American families, where their daughters are named Asha, because my mother saved a child that people thought could not be saved. Everyone who knew her knew how much she genuinely cared. Some of her patients would drive 3 or 4 hours to see her because they weren't comfortable with a male doctor, or they weren't comfortable explaining their conditions in English. She herself drove a full hour each way every week to see patients, almost all of Indian origin, in a clinic dedicated to immigrant women. And she was a great benefactor in the community. Everyone at Hindu Sabha Mandir knew her as Asha Goel. She was a devout Hindu, hosting satsangs, sponsoring pravachans, and she was a pillar of the community. I wish you could have known her. Everyone would light up when she came into the room. She was wit and tremendous dedication. She had a bright smile. She was a light, and people would recognize it. Strangers would recognize it. We feel so fortunate to be able to have called her our mother. For us, she was a pillar of the community, but for us, most of all, she was the center of our family, and her loss has devastated us. My father, a remarkable surgeon in his own right, who has saved countless lives, performed tens of thousands of procedures, has been completely broken.